Hello there, and welcome to Wildcard Decks, a channel where I like to highlight some of the more off-meta options or cards that are perhaps less used in the context of the leaders we're looking at. So today we're looking at Anakin Green. Now, Anakin Green in general is not a particularly off-meta option, but I think I am doing something a bit different with him. So I've named it Little Guys because that is what the deck is built around. It's quite important in the game at the moment to be able to hit enemy units for 5 damage. Now we've got a lot of units here that can deal 5 damage despite how cheap they are, and we also have two cards in particular that enable us to get out a lot of these cheap units at any one time. The deck isn't particularly built around making Anakin the massive threat and finisher. He can still finish things depending on how much healing you've managed to get in or not get in. But yeah, let's get into it. So in terms of the unit split, we are most heavily on the ground. We've got some kind of space presence as well. We do have a bit of removal to help out with that, but yeah, focus on the ground. Then resource cost, as you can see, we've got a lot of cheap stuff. We do have probably too many 6 resource plays on reflection after playing with this, but it can be focused down in future iterations. And then rarity, there's only one legendary in this, so the rest of it is quite plausible to put together. So Anakin himself, if you're not familiar with him, what does he do? So when he's not deployed, you deal 2 damage to your base for his action, and then you can attack with a unit, and if it's attacking a unit, it gets +2 for this attack. So this enables you to do favourable unit trading. Ideally, you'll be taking out their unit whilst leaving your unit still alive. It might only have 1 or 2 health, but it will still be there, and theirs won't be. So the 2 damage to your base might seem counterintuitive, but when you think about it, you're leaving your unit on the board. They aren't able to attack into your base unless they have initiative. They might have already done so, but still, you're in the long run saving damage on your base. And then when he deploys at a 6 resource, he's a 4/7 base, but he does have Overwhelm, which is a nice bonus, but this unit gets +1 for every 5 damage on your base. So as we're running a 25 HP base, the most amount of power he's going to have without any other upgrades or any other kind of shenanigans is 8 power when you're at 20 damage or more. So that is when he will be able to swing the game, potentially by himself pretty much, but that's not what this whole deck is built around. So I've gone with ECL because I do have a few ECL targets to try and help stabilize, but also to get some when defeated effects, which can be useful. One thing to bear in mind is when you're against a particularly aggressive deck, it can be the best play to actually ECL early on. It may not be the so-called best value or the best possible play of an ECL. It might not feel great, but if it stops them getting more damage into you, then it is good to do it early on with even like a 3-cost unit. So just something to keep in mind. So onto the early ground units. Got 3 of R2D2 because he can hit for 3. So again, he will be killing most 1 and 2 resource units by himself, and because of his 4 health, he will stick around. And then as the bonus, you can look at the top card of your deck and start to filter if it's not going to be what you're looking for in the next drawing phase. Battlefield Marine, a staple of green heroism, just a 3/3, and because of Anakin's ability, it can hit for 5, so it will be able to kill the majority of 3-cost units and possibly be able to stick around for some of them as well. Ryloth Militia, I've got 2 of those. It's single aspect, so it's slightly worse than Battlefield Marine, but it's raid 1, so when attacking, it has the same power as Battlefield Marine, so again, it can hit for 5 with Anakin's ability. Sabine Wren, got 2 of those. Again, the on attack gives her 3 potential power into a unit, so again, with Anakin's ability, can hit in for 5, so she can take out 3-cost units as well. The other bonus with her is we do have timely intervention in the deck, so we can ambush in with any unit as long as we've got enough resources. If there's a 1-cost unit on the battle, not 1-cost, 1 health unit remaining on the battlefield, then you can timely intervention her, do the on attack damage to the 1 health unit, and she will take no damage back, so that's quite useful. Advanced Recon Commando, so it's got 4 power. With Anakin's ability, it can hit for 6 into a unit, so this could actually be taking out some 5-cost units, so that's very favourable. Only has 3 health, so it will die to most things that it attacks into, but it does have Overwhelm, so with Anakin's boosted ability, you might get some bonus damage into their base as well. Now, one of the most important cards in the deck is Sundari Peacekeeper. If you don't end up being able to attack with this or draw any of them in the game, you're probably going to lose, unfortunately. But we do have one card that will help us to make sure we are able to deploy one of them. So 3 cost, only has 1 base power, but it has Raid 2. So again, importantly with Anakin's ability, it can hit on attack into a unit for 5, so it will take out a lot of stuff. It has a 5 health pool, so it will survive a lot of things as well. And then crucially, it has Restore 2. We do need healing in this deck because of how often we're going to be activating Anakin's ability, which does for 2 damage to your base. Now, an early feature for the wildcard section, so this is the section where I like to highlight something that is perhaps not being used much or not used in the context of a leader that we're looking at, and I don't believe Cobb Vanth has really been popping up for Anakin. So he's 3 cost, 3/2 stats, which are abysmal for a 3 cost unit, but the most important thing we're looking at is, well, again, he can hit for 5 into a unit, which is what we're looking for our cheap stuff anyway, and then when defeated, search for top 10 cards of your deck for a unit cost 2 or less and discard it. For this phase, you may play that card from your discard pile for free. So if we go back to, we'll do some space units as well, I should say, that would apply to this, but when Cobb Vanth dies, ideally he's taken out a 5 health unit as well in the process. You can then bring any of these, so long as you get them in your 10 cards that you're looking at, any of these into your discard pile to then play it for free in that phase. So you've effectively replaced him. And that is what I find to be particularly useful with this deck. Now, one thing to bear in mind is sequencing, because if you are in a spot where you're possibly going to take initiative and he's still alive, then your opponent, if they've got a daring raid, they can take him out, and then you're not going to get the benefit of his ability. So just something to bear in mind. But yeah, this just helps maintain our unit presence where we're able to trade favorably. Onto the rest of our ground units. So 2 K2SOs. If you've got 3 of him, then you could probably go with 3 of him. He's a good timely intervention and ECL target. So 4/4, solid stats, overwhelm as a bonus, so he can hit for 6 with Anakin's ability, get some overwhelm in, and if he's defeated as well, then you can choose to do the 3 damage or discard. With this deck, I would be tempted to go with the discard option, but it depends what spot you're in at that point. I've gone for 2 of Zeb Aurelios. He could have gone in the wildcard slot, to be honest, as well, because no one uses him. And to be honest, he's not really worth using unless you're ambushing in. So he's basically here as my substitute for Poe Dameron, because I don't have any of those. But what does he do? So he's a 5/5, which are okay stats. When this unit completes an attack, so he has to survive the attack that he's making. If the defender was defeated, you may deal 4 damage to a ground unit. So what you're looking to do with this is ECL or timely intervention him out into a unit with less than 5 power and less than 5 health, or 5 health, whatever. Defeat that unit with the ambush, and then you can deal 4 damage to another ground unit. So hopefully you are able to defeat 2 ground units with 1 ambush. A bit similar to how Wrecker is used, but you don't have to blow up a resource to do it. So in some spots, Zeb is a better option than Poe, if that's what you are needing to do, because Poe, well, you have to discard a card to get his effect, and it only does 2 damage as well. Now, it can go across arenas, unlike Zeb, but yeah, I think Zeb is quite a good substitute for Poe Dameron in general, to be honest, and in some instances actually better. Controversial, I know. 2 of General Riken. So this is for Anakin's flip turn, so he's an excellent ECL target as well, because you can do the when played an on attack on himself to give himself the experience, so he comes in as a 6 powered ambusher with 8 health. So unless your opponent has played resupply, etc., and gotten some more expensive units down, he is very likely to be surviving whatever he's ambushing into, and then it gives Anakin the protection if he is beefed up. So yeah, he's an excellent ECL target as well. What I would say is after playing with this deck a bit, I would probably go with all three of him, and I'd be tempted to ditch Saw Gerrera entirely, who I will get onto now. So Saw Gerrera, why is he here? No one uses him. There might be a good reason for that, but he's a 6 cost, so another potential ECL target. The main reason I decided to put him in was because of his on attack. If your base has 15 or more damage on it, deal 1 damage to each enemy ground unit. So, because we're playing Anakin, that is quite a plausible condition to be active by the time we get to 6 resources. And he has 8 health, so same as General Raiken, he's going to be able to ECL or ambush down and most likely be able to survive. And with the on attack bit active and raid 2, he's actually ambushing in for 7. So we look at Wrecker, he can come in even without the on attack bonus. He can ECL into a Wrecker and survive because he's got 8 health. He can ECL into Maul and survive because he's got 8 health. So that was the kind of thinking behind it. There was also the fact that with the on attack, if they've managed to shield anything, then they will take out the shield. And a bit like Sabine with village protectors, she can take the shield off and then kill the village protectors afterwards. Same with Saw Gerrera. So that was kind of thinking behind it. I think for consistency, I would be inclined to ditch him and go with 3 of Raiken and possibly 3 of Wrecker. I'm still a bit undecided on Wrecker because he's a bit of an odd spot for Anakin in my opinion. But yeah, that's the logic behind Saw Gerrera. Wrecker, the dreaded ECL play of a Sabine deck, he's a bit of an odd spot for Anakin because he's 6 resource play, and if you're needing to take out 2 units, then if you do the when played, you're not going to be able to deploy Anakin. So you're not always really going to want to deploy Anakin as your first play in that phase because it gives your opponent ample opportunity to try and deal with him or mitigate against him. So yeah, I'm not entirely sure if Wrecker is the right choice. In other options, I've come up with a different potential card that could go in this slot instead. But yeah, I'm a bit undecided on him. On to space. So just for one of Anakin's Interceptor, because I want the reliability of the 3 power with the A-Wing. But when your base is 15 or more damage on it, this unit gets +2 attack, so hits for 4. So it is very good when you get to that point, but you need to get to that point before it's better than the A-Wing. So that's why I only gone for 1. A-Wing, staple of Red Heroism, I don't think much more needs to be said. It can hit for 5 with Anakin's ability. Less relevant in space because space stats are generally less than on the ground, but yeah, it can take out a lot of stuff. Take out the Millennium Falcon, the Lando Falcon, that is. When I say the Lando Falcon, I mean the 6 cost one with 5 health. Bright Hope, you could definitely make a case for having 3 of those, and I do have a Resolute in here. I think I would probably ditch a Resolute for a Bright Hope or a Corvette, or possibly a Star Viper for a bit more healing potential. But anyway, it's got 6 health, it just helps shut the space lane down. If you want, you can return a unit to your hand, a ground unit that is, to get a card. So if you've got a Sundari Peacekeeper on the ground that's heavily damaged, it might be worth doing, but it's going to be very situational. Senatorial Corvette, so it's just a very solid Space Arena unit for 5, because it's got Saboteur, 5 attack, so it can hit for 7, which you're not necessarily going to need against space units unless they've ramped ahead. But it also has a nice when defeated, which is your opponent, well, this is each opponent, so it's talking about Twin Suns as well, but each opponent discards a card from their hand. So again, with what we're trying to do is get things under control and then slam them when we get to like 6 resources pretty much, or we're doing chip damage along the way with the bunch of cheap units that we've been able to deploy because of Cobb, Vanth and Bounty Hunter's Quarry, which I'll get onto. Resolute, so this is probably better with a 30 HP base because it costs 1 less for every 5 damage on your base. So the biggest discount you're going to get with this is 4 when you're at 20 damage or more. So it costs 6. I don't think it's massive. When I played with this the other day, there was one spot where if I was one turn away from being able to get it out, and then it would have basically won me the game. But it was, yeah, didn't come to fruition. So as I say, I think I would probably ditch Resolute for maybe a Bright Hope to make that a more reliable draw, so that you can shut the space lane down, relatively speaking. Onto the events, and our second source of healing is Smuggler's Aid. This also could have gone in a wildcard slot. I don't see it in any decks ever, I don't think, really. But it's a 1 cost, heal 3 damage from your base, but you can also smuggle it for 3, so quite expensive for what it is. But we need healing in the deck generally, so it's just another source of healing when there isn't a whole lot going around in green red heroism. Timely intervention, so if you've burned your ECL early because you've needed to against a particularly aggressive deck, then we've got this card that allows us to ambush units out as well, and just helps us respond to things that are perhaps getting a bit out of hand. It can be smuggled as well, and it's only a 2 smuggle cost, so usually smuggle cards are 2 above their base cost when smuggling, but this is only 1, so still very viable. And yeah, if you burned your ECL, you can still stock these up and save them for General Icon, etc. So yeah, that's why that's there. Open fire, just for a bit of removal, 4 damage to a unit, helps to keep space under control as well if we're not drawing those cards. And then 2 of Bravado. I'm sure you all know what it can do with Anakin. It normally costs 5, but if you defeat an enemy unit this phase, which we are going to be doing quite frequently, this event costs 2 less to play, and you can ready a unit. So that's any unit. You can ready Anakin. So if Anakin is 8 power, he's gone into a unit, killed it with Overwhelm, done damage to their base already. You do Bravado, it costs 2 less, ready him again, do another 8 damage. Hell, you could kill another unit if you want. So yeah, that's why that's there. I'm sure you're already aware of it. Another thing you can do with this as well is deploy a unit, having killed another unit already, and then ready that unit you've deployed. So you could be deploying a wrecker. You'll need a lot of resources for this, but deploying a wrecker, you've already killed a unit, and then ready wrecker in that same phase. So that is quite powerful. The only upgrade that I'm running, because I think a lot of Anakin decks go with General's Blade generally, but I've only gone with this. So Bounty Hunter's Quarry, this combined with Cobb Vanth is what allows us to get out our cheaper unit swarm to deal with the enemy's units. So the attached unit gets a bounty, it only costs 1. Search top 5 cards of your deck, or 10 if it's unique, for a unit that costs 3 or less and play it for free. So we're getting good value out of it. It's quite easy to be able to kill the enemy's units because we've got Anakin's boosting ability, so that's why I particularly like it with Anakin. We've got a lot of 3 cost units or less. Now, with this, what you're primarily looking to hit would be the Sundari Peacekeeper, but we've got a lot of other decent options if you do not get that. But yeah, Peacekeeper is going to be the main one to get that healing in. So in terms of other options that I could think of without completely changing the whole nature of what this deck is trying to do. The Consortium Star Viper, because it's got healing. Now, if you don't have initiative, then this is kind of a bit useless, but it's just another source of healing that you might be able to get, which you might need. Admiral Yularen, he's another source of healing. I didn't decide to put him in the main deck because with Anakin's ability, he only hits for 4, so he's not going to be reliably taking out enemy threats at that stage of the game, but he does have Restore 1, and as a bonus, your heroism units get +1 health, so it could be relevant in some situations. Echo Base Defender, I decided against it because it only has 3 health. The 4 attack is nice, but yeah, I just didn't think it was worth it, really. I don't think it really fitted in with what I was trying to do here, but it could do because I haven't got any Sentinels on the ground apart from General Icon, so If you've got two of these on Anakin's flip turn, then that is significant. But yeah, for me, it didn't really fit in. Kit Fisto. So he's one I think could. It sounds a bit mad, but I think he could be the one that fits better with the Wrecker slot. Because if things have gone well and you've done the Bounty Hunter's Quarry, you've got Cobb Vanth trigger off once or twice, you've probably got Coordinate active, so you can ECL Kit Fisto out. He's got 7 power, so he's killing pretty much everything at that stage of the game, apart from Saw Gerrera, as I've already mentioned. But if you've got the Coordinate on attack, you can deal 3 damage to a ground unit. So this would fit in with Anakin, because if you want to kill another unit and the 3 damage would do it, you don't have to destroy a resource to do it. So you can play Kit Fisto out first, clear the ground arena, and then deploy Anakin after, which Wrecker would not allow you to do. So it sounds a bit mad, but I do think that Kit Fisto might be a better choice than Wrecker in this deck. Not in most decks, but in this deck. And then Mace Windu. I was flip-flopping between this or U-Wing Reinforcement, potentially, but I think Mace Windu is probably the better bet because you'll get an immediate impact on the ground. And U-Wing Reinforcement, if we had Sentinels, then like the Echo-based Defender, then U-Wing Reinforcement probably would be more viable, but as I haven't, then yeah, I think Mace Windu possibly fits into this slot better if that's the way you want to go. So a bit of set for scouting based on what has been revealed thus far. I think Blue Leader could be useful, mainly for its versatility. If you've not drawn many space units, then this is a good option because it's got ambush, so you can hit the enemy unit straight away. Sure, Blue Leader might die at the same time, but you've taken out a threat on the board. If the ground arena is getting overrun, then similarly on 5 resources, you can ambush in on the ground with its when played for 5 power. So you don't need to use a timely or your ECL for it. So that's pretty useful. So yeah, I could see a space for Blue Leader in the future in this deck with what it's trying to do. The Droid Missile Platform is 3 cost, 4 power, 2 health, but it's when defeated is what makes it, I think, particularly tasty with this. So 3 indirect damage to a player. So if you're not familiar with how indirect damage is going to work in the next set, it's basically the opponent that's on the receiving end of the damage decides where that damage goes, so they can spread it out between their units and base. So whilst it says 3 indirect damage, that is not one instance of 3. It can be split out however they want. So they could choose 3 different targets to spread it around, so 1 each, maybe 1 on 2 different units and then 1 on base. So what I'm foreseeing with this is timely intervention in this out, so for 4 or 5 resources, killing a space unit, and then there's going to be 3 damage left over that will go elsewhere. So if you've done a good job of taking out their units as you go along, then that 3 damage is going to go on their base. But yeah, I do see a potential spot for this. And then finally, Chewbacca, the new pilot who looks extremely good. So if you deploy him as a unit, then he's 5/6, which are okay stats for a 5 cost resource anyway, but he can't be defeated or returned to hand by enemy card ability. So what I'm thinking is you can deploy him in preparation for Anakin's deploy, because with Anakin's ability, as always, he can hit for 7. So again, at that stage of the game, he is taking out most things and most leaders, and he can't be waylaid or anything like that, so he will stick around. He will be there for Anakin's deploy. Now, of course, another player might be able to ECL their Wrecker into him. Fair enough, then yeah, Chewie's dead and the Wrecker survives, but yeah, that's primarily where I'm thinking Chewie could be a good option, perhaps instead of Zeb. But yeah, I do like how Zeb turned out in the end. So yeah, that's the deck. As I say, it's looking to get a lot of little guys on board with a combination of Bounty Hunter's Quarry, which is quite easy to be able to claim because of the punching up power of Anakin's ability, and Cobb Vanth. He dies very easily. He can hit 5, take something out, replace himself with a little deputy. Could go for an A-wing as well. So yeah, that's kind of the core of this deck. But let me know what you think. I do believe it's a little bit different to the norm for an Anakin deck, and I'm fairly happy with how it's functioned. There's definitely some tweaking to be made, as mentioned. I think Saw and Resolute are the main ones to switch out for other things, but yeah, let me know what you think. Like the video if you enjoyed, and subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll see you in the next one.